Hello, ATLP colleagues. This video serves as a brief introduction to the 5 big ideas today, with pause points for your team or department to discuss how you may implement them or how you may find them interesting. I don't intend to share many examples. There are other videos and resources that do that, so that's fine. But the main purpose, again, of the video is to show the research that supports these ideas. Now, this is not a flash in the pan. This is the direction of travel. 70% of primary schools across the country are using these 5 big ideas to engage with the NCETM and their local maths hubs. It's nowhere near the same numbers when it comes to secondary currently. Now, the latest DFE guidance is very much influenced by these 5 ideas. The guidance for the QTSU curriculum for maths and how to deliver it. So I'm going to be talking about a range of research through this about 30-minute presentation, I'd have thought, with those pause points, including, if I click and see if it works, there we go. The EES recommendations for maths, very influential paper and well worth referring to. So I'm going to be referring to that during this video. Rosenshine's principles as well. I've heard them called the Modern Teacher's Bible, and all of the schools have been engaging with this recently. So I'll be referring to these and how they support the 5 big ideas. This great teaching toolkit, it's a meta-research paper which takes lots of research from different places and says, well, what's effective, what's not. In fact, as it says from the paper, what are the best bets for teachers to invest time and effort in if they want their students to learn more? And very many ideas from this evidence review are linked again with the 5 big ideas. Of course, we've got to link it to what our job is. We have to teach the national curriculum. It is what our job is. And there they are, fluency, reasoning and problem solving. So I'm going to be linking the 5 big ideas to those as well. Now, you might not like me mentioning Ofsted, but actually everything's in alignment right now. We're in a beautiful stage of maths education where all this research is coming together, where no one's disagreeing with what's effective. And applying the EIF, that's the Education Inspection Framework. When the inspectors come, this document talks through what they're going to be looking for. And the 5 big ideas are very much supportive in what's in the Education Inspection Framework as well. So I'm going to be referring to this paper throughout as well. This paper came out in the last couple of years, Nuffield Foundation's Low Attainment in Math. They looked at what are the key strategies that make a difference to our lower attainers in England. So you can see them on the left-hand side there. I'll be referring to those as well. But this is where it all begins, if you like, the NCETM, and they work collaboratively to enhance maths teaching. I'm going to be talking about that quite a number of times during this video as well. Collaboration is absolutely key. And this is the front page of the website, ncetm.org.uk. And to introduce each of the 5 big ideas, I've gone to one page in particular, which I'll take you to in a second. But I want to remind you why the NCETM exists. It's about subject-specific pedagogy. It's teaching maths and only maths. And that's actually really important to realize, because we've got to consider both subject knowledge, what is maths, but subject-specific pedagogy. How do we teach it effectively? And professional development focused on generic pedagogy is not sufficient, particularly in maths. So these sessions to focus individually on the 5 big ideas, how to teach maths effectively, are really important. And that's why so many schools now are collaborating, either within the departments and externally, on these 5 big ideas. So this is the page I was referring to. I will introduce each of the 5 big ideas using the paragraph, as it says here, a little paragraph from each one. I'll go look at the research that supports it, maybe one example just to give you an idea, but then we'll talk about, we'll give you the opportunity to talk in your departments. So coherence lessons are broken down into small connected steps that gradually unfold the concept, providing access for all children and leading to a generalization of the concept and the ability to apply that concept to a range of contexts. Now, Rosenshein, of course, talks about the introducing new material in small steps, because we know our working memory is small, only handling a few bits of information at once. So we're trying to not overload. Let's look at one small step and go deeper in it. Low attainment in math, this paper here, many people said it was the most helpful aspect of individual help, but longer, more detailed explanations than those that the teacher provided to the whole class. Many people said that they like methods to be broken down into small steps, and so they wanted to be provided with lots of examples. And we'll talk about a variety or variation of examples a little bit later on. Now, I think a good scheme of work helps you do this and think of these small steps instead of just throwing everything out there. Now, in the key concepts, so this is Kangaroo Maths I've taken this from, and there's plenty of them out there, but I just thought it was worth giving you the one example. You could use the symbols there, the inequality sign, the equal sign, the greater than, less than symbols. But looking at them step by step, looking at these first, use the signs. Then you use a compound inequality to make sure you can do more than 3 or more numbers. But then ordering a set of integers, leave the decimals. Integers is a skill, it's a knowledge set in itself. Just focus on the set of integers first. And then let's order a set of decimals. And we can build upon what we've learned about integers and negative and positive numbers, but not doing them all together in one lesson, doing the integers and decimals and fractions and everything else all in one lesson. No, let's just do one small step at a time so we can be sure of that concept. And I like this as well from measuring space. Again, Kangaroo Maths, so looking at standard units of measure, converting fluently between metric units of length, the third one down on the list there. It's not metric units of length, mass, volume, and all together. They've just suggested we do them separately because length in itself is a concept. And just to convert fluently between metric units of length, we'll need the knowledge of, okay, what is length? As opposed to, all you do is divide by 1,000, times by 1,000, divide by 10, times by 10 with the metric system. Let's look at length only, so we can really develop our knowledge, our conceptual understanding of what length is. And that's what coherence is looking at, really. There's lots of steps of what we could be considering coherence, but it is thinking about small connected steps. And you can make that connection the next day with maths when you're teaching the converting fluency between maths. Well, use what you taught in the lesson about length as well. But as I say, those three words for me are very important, small connected steps. Let's look at this evidence from the, again, that meta research. What are the best bets for teaching and structuring, giving students an appropriate sequence of learning tasks? So what do we teach and in what order and why? Justify the reasons. You wouldn't do volume before length, for example. If I go back a slide, you do volume afterwards because you need 3 lengths to create that volume. Or maybe more. It would be 3, wouldn't it? I wish I hadn't said that. That's why we do the length first. With the appropriate sequence of learning tasks, so collaborating and thinking what should the right order be, connecting new ideas to what has previously been learned as part of our explaining, activating their hard thinking. Because maths is all about connections. Let's go back to that, connecting new ideas to what's previously been learned. This is from William Eminy's blog. And what you see here is the GCSE maths curriculum, and all the little nodes represent a topic. So as it says, transformations, decimal numbers, frequency polygons, etc. Now there are 164 nodes in this diagram, representing all topics on both the foundation and the higher tier curriculum. And these nodes are connected by all those links. So, and that's where it becomes really important. How much do we make these links obvious to the pupils? Each link represents a connection between 2 topics whereby a prior learning is required to make it accessible. So for example, you teach equivalent fractions, you'd link it to adding fractions because you need to know about equivalent fractions before you do adding fractions. So all these connections here, and it very much says it in our national curriculum as well, in the DfE guidance, that maths is an interconnected subject, and we need to make that explicit to the pupils. This image was taken from Craig Barton's book. And of course, what you see here, the circles representing the units of knowledge, those ovals are schemas, and the lines represent those connections. And we need to create those connections, of course. And of course, the more connections you make and the more schemas that are connected, the stronger the memory, the stronger they remember. And some nice citations here from Bjork, a lead researcher in cognitive science. Retrieval is a powerful memory modifier. Make the connections from what we've seen before. Ah, yes, that supports my working memory. And so I can use that, what I've learned before, and I can use it today in the working memory. Understanding is remembering in disguise, from Willingham's book, Why Don't Students Like School? And so if we understand a new concept, link it to previous stuff, and oh yes, I remember that, and it means you're going to understand it a lot better when we've done that remembering element as well. Ofsted in their EIF document, so again, the document they use to come and look at schools, and they will be judging the school based on this document, applying the EIF to the teaching of mathematics. It does say it very clearly. The curriculum, the scheme of work, divides new material into manageable steps, lesson by lesson. So it's really important when it comes to their visits. So let's take a pause moment at this stage, and a couple of reflection questions for you in your team. What do members of your maths department do to keep up to date with external ideas in maths practice? I've presented a number of different documents to you so far, including latest research, certainly that low attainment for year 9, that's only in the last year or so. So what do you do as a team, or what do individuals do to keep up to date? And those 3 words there I said are really important: small connected steps, with the key words in coherence. How could you try to ensure pupils do make connections with other maths in your lessons? So I encourage you just to pause the video, press stop now, and discuss those 2 questions, and then I'll carry on. Hopefully you did that. And so I'm going to now carry on. Let's look at another of the 5 big ideas. Look at fluency. Quick and efficient recall of facts and procedures, and the flexibility to move between different contexts and representations of mathematics. Now, Rosenshine, again, we talk about that in daily review, weekly and monthly review, because we need that recall. And the answer, many starters, for example, people do retrieval practice with last lesson, last week, last month, last year. It talks about, we talked about remembering and taking it from the long-term memory, but independent practice at the bottom there produces that overlearning, a necessary process for new materials to be recalled automatically. And I like the word automaticity. And some people think fluency is just automaticity. Can you remember something? Can you recall it? Well, actually, we can look a bit better than that as well, because we look at comparing methods. What's the most efficient method? And so Teaching for Mastery book from Mark McCourt, fantastic book. We consider someone to be fluent in a technique, procedure, idea, concept, or facts at the point at which they no longer need to give it attention. And again, we can develop their fluency by looking at efficiency. Now, fluency, of course, the first of the national curriculum's 3 objectives. So it's our job to develop our knowledge of fluency. So Ofsted, in their EIF, in their application of that, when they come visit, they've said it, that pupils understand and remember the mathematical knowledge, concepts, and procedures appropriate. But I like these 4 words, knowledge of efficient algorithms. And these are SATs papers. There's some of the questions that the pupils sit in year 6. 326 divided by 1. Well, should you do the bus stop or short division? Well, divided by 1, what's the concept? What's that mean? How many 1s go into 326 1s? Shouldn't need the bus stop / short division. Let's call it short division, people. Here, taking away 11,999. Well, wouldn't it be more efficient? I could do column subtraction, put the one number above the other and borrow and all that stuff. Exchange would be better. But why not take away 12,000? That would be a much easier subtraction, and then add 1 on, because that's, we've got number sense then. So again, thinking what's the most efficient method? And something like this, 3/5 divided by 3. Well, should we do the KFC? Should we take that 3 over 1 and then flip it, turn it to a times? What does that mean? 3/5 divided into 3 equal parts. And so 3/5 into 3 equal parts. Well, that would be a 5th, wouldn't it? I'll demonstrate that in a few moments for you. But it has been shown as a common weakness in teaching problem solving. Problem solving, one of the 3 national curriculum national objectives, assessment objectives, sorry. When problems are set, teachers do not use them well enough to discuss with pupils alternative approaches and why one is more elegant than another. Jane Jones, former lead for Maths for Ofsted, said it like this: messages from Ofsted's report, Mathematics Made to Measure, emphasise the importance of developing conceptual understanding. Those words appear on the assessment objectives as well. Developing conceptual understanding, not just procedural proficiency on its own, and giving all the pupils the chance to solve problems and reason about their work. And so I think it looks like this Venn diagram, that conceptual understanding. What is this about? Versus the procedural fluency. Now, Ofsted published their research review on maths education, and they review curriculum content into 3 areas, if you like. The declarative knowledge, I know that. These are facts, formula, concepts, understanding a concept. Then there's the procedural knowledge, the second one down there, recorded as a sequence of steps, what you do, the methods, if you like, the algorithms, the procedures. So I know how to do that. Conditional knowledge, of course, the ability to reason and problem solve. Again, that fits with the assessment objectives of the national curriculum. Our job to teach is that national curriculum. But when do I use each of these procedures as well? So pupils need to, if they don't know what method or what can they identify quickly? Method selection. And that goes into the problem solving element of the GCSE and of the papers that they teach in primary and secondary. Now, do you notice how much this very much links with that Venn diagram? I think it does. I think it's I know that, the concepts, learning, understanding that concept, and then how to perform the algorithms that use those concepts. And so I really like that Venn diagram as a kind of representation of what we need to do as our job. That middle there, that intersection is that sweet spot that we want to achieve when teaching mathematics. Now, again, let's look at how the Ofsted inspectors are going to look for it. And again, though, don't see this as a negative. It's in alignment of the 5 big ideas. It's in alignment with current research. They're not asking for anything that we shouldn't be doing. I think this is a fantastic document for departments to know right now. So within the curriculum, there are sufficient opportunities planned to revisit previously learned knowledge, concepts, and procedures. Let's get to this line here. Mathematical knowledge, therefore, becomes deeply embedded in pupils' memories. This then allows rapid and accurate recall, so talking about fluency, and frees pupils' attention, automaticity, so that they can work with increasing independence. They can apply their mathematical knowledge to more complex concepts and procedures. Again, the assessment objectives of the national curriculum. So looking at this third one here, I said that 3/5 divided by 3. Well, how can you understand this question? Well, you could do it with representation. If that's 1, well, there's 3/5. That gives you an idea of what 3/5 actually means in comparison to 1. And so 3/5 divided into 3 equal parts. Well, one of those 3 equal parts is a fifth. Should you need to do the KFC? In reality, no, you shouldn't. And the example there of representation and structure. Representations, one of the 5 big ideas, used in lessons expose the mathematical structure being taught. The aim being that students can do the maths without recourse to the representation. Rosenshine, of course, talks about this, providing models. Students need cognitive support to help them learn how to solve problems so they can see the maths. Low attainment in maths paper, again, pupils appear to benefit from explicit teaching on how to use manipulatives and representations in order to establish those connections, coherence, to the intended mathematical ideas. I did want to include this next line though. A more consistent approach to using representations and manipulatives is needed. I think that's really important. I talk about collaboration. How's one person in the classroom, maybe next to you, using representation different to yours? Could that be more effective? Could yours be more effective than theirs? And so I think that more consistent approach is really important. So I'm going to ask you to reflect on that in a few moments' time. Plenty of research supporting representation and structure. In the Cochran report 1982 proposed the use of manipulatives. The British government chose not to kind of adopt the findings of the Cochran report, but Singaporean schools very much did. And you will hopefully know that Singapore and Shanghai are the highest performing countries across the world. Now, Singapore went down this idea of creating bar modeling, and it's the most popular way of exposing maths pictorially, enabling pupils to solve problems. It encourages pupils to visualize the problem before attempting to undertake the abstract question. Can you see the problem first? I now understand it. Now I'm going to have a go at solving it. And that approach is being shown to increase that conceptual understanding. Again, 2 words that you find on the assessment objectives of the national curriculum, and it's been shown to have a positive effect on attainment in English classrooms. Let's go back to this meta research. There it is there, understanding the content, being able to generate varied explanations and multiple representations, analogies, examples for the ideas you're teaching. That's the kind of thing we need to invest in so our pupils get better outcomes. Ofsted again, let's go to this document. Teaching models, new procedures and uses resources and approaches that enable pupils to understand the maths, not just perform, understand the maths that they are learning. So it's now time for that pause moment and ask you to talk in your teams and with your colleagues. I'd like to share with a member of your team an example of how you use representation in your lessons, or discuss a topic where you'd like to learn how to use representation. And secondly, we can develop fluency, as I mentioned, by getting pupils to consider efficiency of methods. How could you try to ensure this happens in your lessons? Once again, if you could press pause on the video at this stage, and then we'll introduce the final 2 of the NCETM's 5 big ideas. Let's move on then. Okay, so we've got 2 more to go. Variation is twofold. It's firstly about how the teacher represents the concept being taught, often in more than one way, to draw attention to critical aspects and to develop that deep and holistic understanding. And so when we introduce the concept, I'm going to use one of the ones I always like using, a hexagon. A hexagon isn't just the thing in the top left. If we only show them that one in the top left, the regular hexagon, they'll believe that's what a hexagon is. But it can also be something else. It can also be all of those because they all have 6 straight connected sides. It is a closed shape. It is a polygon. It's an example of a polygon. They all are. And that's really, in fact, is the top left one the regular one? It might be the middle one, actually, on deeper reflection. But do you know what? What's the same? What's different? A lovely question to ask when you're looking at these things. But we need to understand the concept. And again, you see that in the aims of the national curriculum. There are those words there. Variation, varied and frequent practice to develop conceptual understanding. Let's see a variation in what a hexagon is. Let's see variation in what a quadratic equation is. Let's see variation in what a straight line graph might be. And teaching with variation, the central idea, of course, highlight the essential features, but we can vary the non-essential features. The quadratic equation must have the highest power. The x highest power must be 2. Can you have negative powers? There's a question for you. From Rosenshine, we'll look at this, this part here. In a study of maths instruction, the most effective maths teachers spent about 23 minutes of a 40-minute period in lecture, demonstration, questioning and working examples, back and forth. What questions would they be? So when we look at Rosenshine, he says, well, asking questions, the most successful teachers ask questions. What's the same? What's different? A really powerful question we could be asking to make sure we understand a concept, draw attention to those critical aspects. And so this is how the NCETM encourage it with the positive variation, the standard and the non-standard, the regular and the irregular. But you then have to compare it to the what isn't correct, what isn't a hexagon. And the language I think we can use in classrooms is what it is, what it's also, and what it's not. Took this from Steve Lomax, one of the creators of Kangaroo Maths. He's involved with the NCETM. Fantastic maths pedagogy. And again, when I said about where do you look externally, I very much follow him on Twitter and enjoy hearing his ideas. But what it is also, and what it is not, conceptual variation. Now, the meta-research from evidence-based education support this as well, understanding the content. We have the knowledge of common student strategies, but here is misconceptions. So why would people not think that's a hexagon? Why would people not think that's a quadratic equation? These are the sticking points. And if we've given them plenty of good examples, like Rosenshine said as well, we can make sure, well, do you know what? The comparison of them all, what's the same, what's different? And we can say, right, we know what this concept is, what it's also, and what it's not. Those varied explanations, multiple representations, multiple examples, not just one. In fact, on that Rosenshine quote, I probably should go back to it. There's one bit I didn't point out. In contrast, the least effective teachers spent only 11 minutes presenting new material. In other words, not enough examples. Just press through. My choice of examples, says Craig Barton, and exercises are the single most important part of my planning. So we talked about the examples. What about the exercises? Look at the second part of this variation line. It's also about the sequencing of the episodes, the activities and exercises used within a lesson, and follow-up practice, paying attention to what is kept the same and what changes, to connect the mathematics and draw attention to mathematical relationships and structure. The questions we ask, can we get the pupils to think about them? Well, let's see. Well, again, this is about asking questions. But what's the impact of the change? When asking these kind of questions like these here, what's the impact of the change? Because we could just get pupils, do you know what? Learn the method, learn the algorithm, divide by the bottom, time by the top, divide by the bottom, time by the top. But are they going to understand the concept? But look at the change here. Maybe we encourage them from question 2 to 3. Well, what's the same? What's different? Well, the fractions stay the same, but the amount of money has doubled. So what does that mean for our answer? And you could do the same again. We've taken away an eighth. Do we need to divide by the bottom, time by the top? You can ask people to think about what change does this make? And of course, you could use representation. Here you've got 12 broken into 3 equal parts, so 3/3. So what would 2/3 equal? But if I double the amount, all the thirds will double as well. So variation theory posited on the view that when certain aspects of a phenomenon vary, while its other aspects are kept constant, those aspects that vary are discerned. They're recognized. We learn from them because we can see the variation. Oh, okay, I can see what's happening. And then that's why it comes out. That's where the understanding. Again, linking that to the National Curriculum for Maths, we've said about conceptual understanding. But let's look at this second assessment objective. We follow a line of inquiry. If I make this change, what's going to happen? I conjecture what's going to happen, the relationships between these questions. And you develop an argument and justify what's going to happen using that proper mathematical language. Go back to the meta-research. Activating hard thinking, one of the best bets to invest time in to make sure our pupils will get better outcomes. Let's see all the questions. Using questions and dialogue to promote elaboration and connected, flexible thinking among learners. So we're trying to get our pupils to talk, just like it said in the national curriculum there. Why? Why are they the same? Why are they different? Why would the change happen? Compare each question to each other. We're using questions to elicit that student thinking. And mathematical thinking is the 5th and final of these 5 big ideas from the NCETM. If taught ideas are to be understood deeply, they can't be merely passively received. Just, here you go, here's the method, have a go. They must be worked on by the student, thought about, reasoned with, and discussed with others. Rosenshine principles again, ask questions. And I go back to the mathematics program of study. This is our job, to teach these as maths teachers. And this line is here. Pupils who grasp concepts rapidly should be challenged through being offered rich and sophisticated problems before any acceleration through new content in preparation for Key Stage 4. So if a pupil has, let's say, been adding fractions, you don't move them on to multiplying fractions in the classroom. We go deeper. We ask them to think about reasoning and problem solving, its differentiation by depth, that adaptive teaching, to challenge those pupils a little bit further through reasoning and problem solving activities. which very much alignment with the 5 big ideas, that idea of mathematical thinking. And we can see them here again, those aims at those national curriculum. I really enjoy this quote, but I often just say the final bit of it. So I thought it was worth actually giving a little bit more from it, from Daniel T. Willingham's book, Why Don't Students Like School? Your memory system lays its bets this way. If you think about something carefully, you'll probably have to think about it again, so it should be stored. Thus, your memory is not a product of what you want to remember or what you try to remember. It's a product of what you think about. Whatever you think about, that's what you remember. Memory is the residue of thought. If you give it that thought and that attention, and you reason about it, and you discuss it, and you conjecture, and you prove, and you find out why, it's more likely to stick. The low attainment in maths paper also justified a lot of this. Things which make a big difference to low attainers are number lines, arrays, representation. But here's the interesting one: derived facts, connections, coherence. Students rarely use derived facts and rarely estimate, but teachers do not teach these derived facts explicitly. This is very much connecting with coherence again, isn't it? Teachers believe derived facts are obvious. If I know one thing, then I know something else. To the students, these aren't obvious. Students are unfamiliar with derived facts. Now let's look at this. I love this example again, actually, Steve Lomax. It's something he does with Can Do Maths. I know that 7 times 8 is 56. So looking at the first column, if I know 7 times 8 is 56, I know 8 times 7 is 56. I know 56 divided by 8 is 7. Look at the second column. Therefore, I know that 7 is a factor of 56. Therefore, I also know 8 is a factor of 56. I know 56 is a multiple of 7. This is all connected. All comes from the 1 times table fact that 7 times 8 is 56. Look at the third column. Therefore, from this fact, I know that a 7th of 56 is 8. I know an 8th of 56 is 7. I know a 7th multiplied by 56 equals 8. Go on to the fourth column. If I know 7 times 8 is 56, I know 7 times 80 is 560. Now, of course, the 5 big ideas are certainly all connected as well, because I could use representation here. There's 7 lots of 8. Then again, I could also do 8 lots of 7. Or I could do an array, and you can see a 7th of it. You can see, so I want 7 equal parts. I'll divide that into 7 equal parts. And the pupils can understand the concept, but we make those connections and say, well, if I know, then I know. Ofsted are certainly asking for this when they do their visits. The school's curriculum identifies opportunities with mathematical reasoning and solving problems. The national curriculum will allow pupils to make those connections between identified mathematical ideas or anticipate practical problems they are likely to encounter in adult life. You may notice I haven't actually cited the EEF's paper yet, and that's because they've done the work for me when it comes to linking these two. They wrote a blog, Mastery, the NCETM's approach, with their guidance, how our guidance can help. And so this blog here talked about, it basically says how they're in alignment. Let's have a look. We start with coherence, refers to connecting new mathematical ideas to ideas that pupils have already understood. Of course, to do that, you need assessment. Recommendation 1. Of course, coherence is also concerned with enabling pupils to develop a rich network of mathematical ideas. Recommendation 4. Representation and structure emphasizes how representation should be used to expose that mathematical structure. That sounds like recommendation 2 to me. And it also, recommendation 4, that mathematical knowledge, that rich network of knowledge to recognize and use that in mathematical structure. Let's look at another of the 5 big ideas. Mathematical thinking is addressed throughout the recommendations, particularly in number 4 there, develop a rich network of mathematical knowledge. But definitely recommendation 3, teach pupils problem-solving strategies. And recommendation 5, develop pupils' independence and motivation. We mentioned earlier on, didn't we, about making sure that independent work is so important, so they get the chance for it to stick. Fluency, stressing the importance of developing quick, efficient recall of number multiplication facts and the skilled, flexible use and application of procedures. Well, recommendation 4 again, fluent recall of facts, understanding procedures, choosing between mathematical strategies. By the way, all these words from the bottom on these slides are all taken from this EEF blog. Finally, variation is a key feature of several recommendations, notably teaching pupils strategies for solving problems. We talked about making those connections. And if I know one thing, then I know another. Using tasks and resources to challenge and support maths, pupils' maths. In other words, how many times we've represented this concept. The truth is, everything is beautifully aligned right now. It really, really is. From the NCETM 5 big ideas, I've linked it to the EEF's report. I've linked it to Rosenshine. I've linked it to the meta research from the evidence-based education. I've linked it to this paper from Nuffield Foundation about those who are lower attainers and what can we do to support them. I've linked it to the importance of our job, teaching the national curriculum, because we need to always go back to that and remember that is what we're trying to achieve. And yes, I decided to go with Ofsted as well, but I think that's the right thing to do because we are lucky right now. Everything is beautifully aligned. I want to take you to just this final thing, if I may, before I've got some final questions for you to consider in the department. Taking us to Tim Brighouse, he was the National Commissioner for Schools. We talk about ingredients for school success. You know you're in a good school when teachers talk about teaching. They observe each other teach. They plan, organize, and evaluate together. Teachers teach each other. Collaboration is key. And the process of schools collaborating is the topmost source of school improvement. And so I'm going to ask you to look at this document here. It's Secondary Maths Teaching for Mastery, some themes and key principles. And if you are a primary school watching this, there's these equivalent document for primary as well. But what I want you to do is take either one of the documents. I've chosen the secondary one here. And I want you to read and discuss these principles together. And then, what can you agree upon to ensure your own personal and your department's intent and implementation are aligned? So the intent, what do we want to achieve? The implementation, how do we do it? We want what you in your classroom, you want your intent and implementation to be aligned across the department. And of course, therefore, the impact, therefore, can be strongly positive on our pupils. I hope you found this interesting. Certainly, I know many departments will be looking at, I should hope you're going to look at each of these 5 big ideas in a lot more depth. There are other videos and resources online on my website and other places, of course, to support you do that. But I hope you found that interesting today.